Ever wondered why it's so difficult to get through to a narcissist? Why it's so hard to get them to self-reflect and see that they are hurting you in the way that they are hurting you? No matter how many times you bring up all of the fuck shit they've done to you, it just seems to go right past them. And it's like they are unable to self-reflect and see what they are doing to you is wrong. The reason for that, guys, is because this is a shame-based disorder. As children, during the earliest formation of their personality, they never laid down their primitive, childlike self-defenses, such as black and white thinking, such as dissociation. They never developed whole object relations. They struggle with object constancy. And one of the biggest problems they have is a struggle with emotional permanence and understanding that someone could love them, even if they don't show it 24/7. They struggle with the fact that someone can be good and bad. They don't understand that there's a lot of gray in the world and that somebody can still love them, even if sometimes they hold them accountable, even when sometimes they tell them no, even when sometimes they don't give in to their every want, need, and desire. All these things are considered in psychology and described in psychology as primitive childhood self-defenses and coping mechanisms. They never learned how to do it the right way. Narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, these are all things that are developed in very early childhood from the ages of 2 to 6. All children start out as narcissists. And by the age of 7, if their primary care provider hasn't taught them how to move on from that, how to graduate from these primitive self-defenses and primitive ways of surviving, by the time they're teenagers, you can imagine they're pretty much going to be the way they are. One of the biggest problems with narcissists is, again, their inability to self-reflect. And there's another disorder that is very similar to NPD. In fact, most of the time, people can't tell the difference. And that is borderline personality disorder. If you are new to my channel, I am a self-aware diagnosed narcissist, and I also have borderline personality disorder. I'm diagnosed with that as well. Most narcissists don't go to therapy, and most narcissists don't even know they're narcissists. They're completely unaware of it. Most of them. Some of them do know that they are narcissists. Some of them are aware and just simply don't care, because what they have done their entire lives has worked out for them. But it really hasn't worked out for them, has it? Because they have failed relationship after failed relationship after failed relationship. Narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder is also on a spectrum. Some of them are a lot different than others. The DSM-5 is what we use in the United States to diagnose these personality disorders, and there are 9 criteria for BPD, borderline personality disorder, and there are 9 criteria for NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. You don't see a lot of narcissists in the comments on my page saying things like, well, I don't do that. I'm not like that. I just want to be loved. Because of the nature of NPD, it causes the person to be completely blind to the fact that they have some of these maladaptive behaviors. It makes them blind to the fact that they are neglectful, not compassionate. It makes them blind to the fact that they do, in fact, show a lack of empathy towards other people. And empathy, or lack thereof, is not across the board the same with all narcissists. And I hate to tell you, but it's not across the board the same with people who have borderline personality disorder either. If a narcissist goes to treatment, if a narcissist gets in therapy, you can bet they were in a collapse when they did it. They were narcissistically injured in such a way that they actually sought out treatment finally. And if they chose to do it, you can also bet that at the time they were hurting very badly and they were looking for relief. Most clinicians, most doctors who specialize in these sort of things are not nearly as educated on the matter as you think they are. I like to describe it as they can tell you what time it is, but they don't know how a clock works and they don't know how to build a clock. When these narcissists come into their office, most of the time they are in collapse. Something really tragic has happened in their life, or they've lost a lot of things. They've lost their house, they've lost their car, they've lost their wife, they've lost their kids, or, with some narcissists, they lost all their extra girlfriends they had. A lot of narcissists are very unfaithful and they do cheat, a lot of them, but not all of them. Just like not all borderlines have the levels of empathy that they claim to have. I've noticed a trend when it comes to narcissists and borderlines. Narcissists absolutely, in many cases, have no intentions of taking any accountability for what they do whatsoever. And that's because it brings them shame. It makes them feel like a bad object. It makes them feel like a bad person. And by the way, object is just a psychology term for person. I've noticed that borderlines don't have that problem as much, but they also have a problem with self-reflection. They have a problem with entitlement. They have a problem with empathy. It even says that in the diagnostic criteria in the DSM-5. But you'll see a lot more people with borderline personality disorder in treatment. You'll see a lot more of them in therapy. And there's many reasons for that too. But it's not because it's easier for them to self-reflect or take accountability. And in many cases, when somebody with borderline personality goes to therapy, it's because they were forced to as well. And a lot of times that's by their parents or by the school system. When they're younger, you'll see a lot more people diagnosed with BPD, borderline personality disorder, in the early years of their life. And you'll see a lot more people with NPD get diagnosed with it in the latter part of their life. Usually after everything they've done and all their grandiose delusions and fantasies and their ideas of success, power, fame, beauty, and an ideal love fail. You see, many people think that borderlines or people with BPD just want to be loved and that they're these disordered little angels that could do no wrong, when in fact, they are just opposite sides of the same coin. They are not opposites of one another. But I have noticed that people with borderline personality disorder have just as many problems self-reflecting, just as many problems with entitlement, just as many problems with empathy as people with narcissistic personality disorder. Anytime I make a video on borderline personality disorder, and a lot of them I actually put out by clinicians, by licensed professionals, the comment section will be filled with people with borderline personality disorder saying things like, "Fuck you. You're full of shit. I am not like that. I would never cheat on my partner." And you need to understand what cheating is to a borderline sometimes. If you wrong a borderline, or if they even perceive that you have wronged them, they many times will take revenge on you for that. For them, it's a way of gaining their power back. It's a way of them realigning their ego and their super ego, just like a narcissist does, and remaining egocentric, feeling like a good person, a good object, and staying off any feelings of shame. Both BPD and NPD are shame-based disorders. But you will see them in the comments staunchly defending how good of a person they are, how loving they are, how caring they are, and completely disregarding the clinician or doctor or therapist or even me or another creator who is calling them out on their bad behavior. Now, there are 256 combinations of symptoms with borderline personality disorder. There are 9 criteria by which they are diagnosed, and you only need to meet 5 of those criteria, just 5, in order to get that diagnosis. So are all borderlines the same? They absolutely are not. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are diagnosed with BPD are not even BPD. They don't even have borderline personality disorder. They have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD. And additionally, as I said earlier in the video, most narcissists do not go to therapy unless they have to, unless they've been forced to in some way, or unless they are in a collapse. So a lot of clinicians who aren't trained how to recognize these disorders correctly, they will actually have a narcissist come into their office, and guess what happens? They diagnose them with borderline personality disorder instead, because the narcissist is in a state of collapse when they come in. They are in a state of mortification, and therefore their narcissistic defenses are down. The only difference between a borderline and a narcissist is extra layers of defenses. I compare it to an onion a lot of times. All narcissists and borderlines have a personality that is borderline personality structured, borderline personality organization. It starts with narcissism, and if they are not able to live life as a narcissist, they tend to become a victim. They tend to become a vulnerable narcissist, quite honestly, and a lot of times they tend to be somebody with borderline personality disorder.